Welcome into another edition of Locked On 76ers. That's Keith Pompey. I'm Marc Farzetta. Together, we're going to talk about our takeaways from the 76ers Summer League and really what's changed between the Sixers that walked off the court at the end of last season and the Sixers that will walk on the court to start this upcoming NBA season. All that and more on this edition of Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers. Your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And we do thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This particular episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Keith, the Summer League has wrapped. What are your number one takeaways, or your top takeaways, I should say, from this year's Summer League action in quotation marks?
I mean, are you talking about for the Sixers or overall Summer League?
I'm going to just say just the Sixers for now.
Just the Sixers. I mean, you know, the thing is, my biggest takeaway is that VJ Edgecombe is an extremely athletic guy. You know, he's going to be a project, so to speak. And I say that in a respectful way, meaning like, you know, he's going to have to work on certain things, but at the same time, his athleticism is something that the 76ers can take advantage of, you know, in due time. I think that he does give them an upgrade coming off the bench with that athleticism that they didn't have before. Now, Ricky Council was extremely athletic, but this guy seems to get up higher. He just has that it factor. So that to me was the biggest takeaway. But again, I don't know if he's a starter at this particular time. There were other guys who I really liked seeing, and they were kind of impressive. One of them was Judah Mintz. The only problem I have with Judah Mintz is, you know, when you look at him, you know, he's in the mode of like a Maxey, like a Jared McCain, like a Quentin Grimes, whereas, but he just doesn't shoot the ball from outside as good as those three. But what he is, you know, he's kind of sort of like a point guard who can get to the rim, a guy who's like a scorer first. So when you say that, what is he going to be? He'll be at best the fourth string guard. So I don't think that they'll have a spot for him. Like he could probably get a training camp invite and do things. But I also think that he'll probably, with that, he'll go back to their G League team. But to me, those two guys were the ones who really stood out the most. And Mark Armstrong, he stood out as well, showing that he could be a guy for maybe not the Sixers, but another team could be a candidate to get a two-way deal.
Yeah, I think if we're honestly playing for jobs in a vacuum with no other contract commitments and all that stuff, I think it'd be very difficult to say that Judah Mintz didn't earn himself on this NBA roster for the 76ers. But unfortunately, with the way things are going to work out, it's probably not going to happen. But if I had to look at one guy that was the MVP for the Sixers, Judah Mintz would be that guy. Now, as far as Edgecombe goes, I agree with everything you said. And what it comes down to is what we saw from VJ Edgecombe at Baylor, what a lot of scouts and reports, yourself included, thought about him before the draft rang true during Summer League. For the 2 games we saw him play in, Keith, we saw that great athleticism. We saw a guy that certainly struggled when he was asked to be the point guard. He is still a work in progress, and I am in the same school of thought as you, and I think most people here, where he didn't play himself into the starting 5 in Summer League. That was going to be difficult to do anyway, but he didn't do it. And everything that we knew about him, we saw play out. Yeah, the athleticism was off the charts. The aggression was off the charts. Defensively, he was in people's hip pocket whenever he was asked to play for those 2 games. Everything that we knew about him was confirmed in his first stint in professional basketball. He still has a long way to go, still has a lot to work on. I do look forward to seeing with this guy that has that tenacious work ethic that you hear about from a Tyrese Maxey or a Jared McCain, that he is going to work his butt off over the next couple of months to see how much he can improve. You've talked about it a lot when it comes to Jared McCain and what he did in his limited summer league action compared to what he did when he played in his 23 games as an actual NBA player, how he worked his way into the starting five there for a little bit, also worked himself into the Rookie of the Year conversation. The time that he was out there likely would have been the Rookie of the Year. I look forward to seeing over the next couple of months the steps forward that VJ Edgecombe takes. And hopefully when we see him in training camp the next time this team is together and see him in the preseason, we see the fruits of his labor, Keith, a guy that did work on his ball handling so he can at least be an option in bringing the ball up. Still not going to demand that of him, but when it's called upon by the team that he could do it, his shot selection, his outside shooting, and keeping the high level we have seen when it does come to the aggression in attacking the basket, when it comes to his tenacity on the defensive side of things, and it also comes to being able to shoot from the outside.
Yeah. You know who else it's weird because, heading into after he was drafted, Johni Broome received a lot of criticism for his lack of athleticism. Now, he isn't, he's a big body. He's not as athletic as you would want a guy to be. But at the same time, when we look at a guy who's just going to be situational, a guy who's going to be kind of sort of like an end of the bench player, most likely. The one thing that I did see was his willingness to shoot the ball and make some threes, right? So to me, that was a little bit impressive. And he does have a big body to where he can set picks, he can free up other people and do some of the dirty things. He has a high basketball IQ, but to me, the thing that really was impressive was, his ability to make threes. He didn't always shoot at a high level, in the summer league. It was a little bit inconsistent in certain games, but at the same time, I was impressed by that, based on people were saying he can't shoot and people were saying certain things. And then you listen to Bruce Pearl, his college coach, talking on the telecast. Yeah. And he was basically saying, we kind of held him back a little bit on some of that because we didn't need that from him. So I really like that. I also like his his competitiveness. He's a trash talker and he's not afraid to tell you when he's busting your tail that I'm busting your tail, stuff like that. To me, these are the type of dogs that the 76ers need. They need that. And Edgecombe has that as well, as we know, as we've seen. And then he has it too, talking about Broome. So to me, that was impressive seeing that from him.
Yeah, I love that from him. And the other thing I will say about this, I think it was Williams, another Auburn guy that he was talking that trash with.
Yeah.
I always want to see these guys having fun as long as they're producing, and Johni Broome was producing in the summer league. But one thing I really liked about him was he was aggressive on the boards, which is obvious. You want your big man or a guy that could be playing the 4 for you. You want to see that he is aggressive on the boards. He was certainly that. The other thing that kind of raised my eyebrows, like, oh, that's interesting to see him do it at this level, was the distribution. Now, he didn't have like 10 assists a game or anything like that, but there were just little things that he did in his time playing that made me go, oh, okay, that is part of his game. That'll be part of his game at the NBA level as well. And it was just little things, little dump-off passes, kick-outs, whatever they might have been. If it wasn't there for him, he didn't force it. I thought that was good heads-up play by him, and I thought it was also heads-up to have some court vision that I didn't expect for him to have out of Auburn. So that's one thing I will look at from him. That was a pleasant surprise at the summer league level, and certainly hope he continues to develop that as his career gets underway with the Sixers. I do want to talk about what's changed with the Sixers team, because Keith wrote a great article on Inquirer.com. After the summer league, just kind of looking at it from the bird's eye view, looking down on the Sixers squad, and you look at a lot of the names and you go, okay, a lot of familiar faces here. Obviously the big three, quote unquote. But when you look at the other pieces, they brought back a lot of those familiar faces. We'll talk about that when we return. This is Locked On 76ers podcast and a Locked On Sixers YouTube channel. Back after this. Now, let me tell you about Monarch Money. You've heard us talking about this before. If you've ever wished managing your money felt a little bit easier, that's where Monarch Money comes in. With Monarch Money, it can feel so much easier to grow your wealth. Also, plan for the big purchase, save that money. Monarch puts you in the driver's seat when it comes to your finances. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you are building your wealth. Maybe you're saving up for a new car, maybe a house, your first house, maybe, or maybe you got 2 young kids you're saving for college. Monarch Money can help you with that entire process. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Promo code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year at monarchmoney.com. So the way I look at it, Keith, we have a lot of familiar names, a lot of familiar faces when it comes to the 76ers squad. If I had to guess the starting 5 for the upcoming season, hopefully people being healthy, I think we've both predicted that one more time. I know I predicted that Embiid would not be healthy for the start of the season. What's your gut telling you as far as Embiid goes?
You know, it's tough to say because, like we talked about it before,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where, Joel could be working out now, but if it was my gut, Joel won't be available in the beginning. Like, he's going to take his time. It's one of those things where I think at this particular time, when Joel comes back, he wants to look good. Now, if he's out there working out and he's doing stuff that behind closed doors and he feels good about himself, yeah, he'll return. But if he's not, I don't see him coming back until he plays at a high level. Because when you think of it, the first game last year against the Knicks, he shot 2 for 11 from the field. It was like a un-Embiid like performance, especially to start the beginning of the season. And I don't think he wants to go through that again.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the phrase that really does stick out from the lengthy article was not gonna push it, not gonna rush to get back. Those are the words from that article, as many words as there were in that article, Keith, that haunt me the most about just whether or not he's going to be ready. So that's what I base a lot of my opinion on. That, hey, there's going to be no rush to this. We're not going to push ourselves through anything we don't want to push through or we're not comfortable with doing. So that, to me, it signifies even now, well before the season starts, that they're not going to be at that point just yet. So I know the goal with the Sixers, though, is that they have this starting 5 as often as possible. Maxey, Grimes over Edgecombe, George, I'd say Oubre, and Embiid. Do you think that's the way they're looking at it right now at the conclusion of Summer League and awaiting Quentin Grimes?
Yeah, I think that's the way they're looking at it. Just because, unless VJ Edgecombe comes out and shows them that he can, take the wheel, so to speak, from them. But the crazy part about it is when you look at it, this lineup is similar to height-wise to last year's. I mean, you have Tyrese Maxey, who's 6'1", 6'2". He's listed as 6'2". Then you have a 6'5" person in Quentin Grimes or VJ Edgecombe, but we're going with Grimes, right? Well, Caleb Martin was 6'5". And then you go with Kelly Oubre, who's 6'7", right? He's coming back. Paul George, who's 6'8". And then Joel Embiid, who's 7'2". Or if Joel Embiid doesn't start, Drummond started at the beginning of the season, who was 6'11". But let's just say for some people who think that they feel like Adem Bona is a better option, well, then you're even smaller with a 6'8" Adem Bona. He's listed at 6'10", but he's actually 6'8". So, the only difference is that Quentin Grimes is a more consistent 3-point shooter than Caleb Martin. But Caleb Martin is a better player when we come down to playing different positions and being more of a utility player. You know what I mean? I think that Quentin Grimes' offensive skills are better, but as far as being that utility type guy, I would say Martin is better on the defensive end. But it's the same team. Basically, you take that guy, it's essentially the same team.
Yeah. McCain coming off the bench, Edgecombe we mentioned. And then the smoking gun, if you will, Eric Gordon's back. Kyle Lowry's back. Ricky Council as well. You look at Watford. You could look at Janai Broom coming off the bench as well. This is a lot of the same. Andre Drummond, we're talking about. You mentioned it, Dembona.
Yeah.
Where am I seeing a difference, Keith? Where am I seeing a difference in this team from last year to this year?
The difference is VJ Edgecombe, right? That's the difference. These other guys, I don't know if they're going to be difference makers the way that people think. They may have flashes. Like another difference maker could be, but I'm not is trending Wofford. But to me, it's Edgecombe, and the Edgecombe thing is crazy, just because when we look at it, KJ Martin was another guy who was 6'5", VJ Edgecombe 6'5", but KJ Martin was a forward, but he had these crazy athleticism. He got up and he dunked on people. He did a lot of other things. He got out in space, and it was like, wow, look how athletic he is. Now, again, Edgecombe has a higher upside. He's a guard, while the other one was a forward. So which means is he has more offensive skills. But when we're talking about in the open floor athleticism, there is a similarity. Although one is a guard, the other one was a forward, there's just a similarity. So yeah, the biggest difference in this team is him at the guard spot, but they have height now at the forward position, because before the biggest forward that they had coming off the bench was Gershon Yabusele. Now, and he was only 6'8", 6'7", really, if you want to be honest. Mm-hmm. But now you have three guys in Wofford, Don Barlow, and Jabari Walker, who are all 6'9". So that's the biggest difference. But again, the key is, how do you blend these guys into the mix, and how are they going to be impact players for the Sixers?
As we stand right now with Quinton Grimes, we're going to get more into the specifics of Quentin Grimes in a second. But as we stand right now, you can look at the roster and you can certainly look at the obvious, some of the new names that are on there. There's a lot of the same. There are some new names on there. But I think overall, the ask of fans is philosophy. Like, philosophically, how is this team going to go about playing basketball? Whatever Joel Embiid's status is, I don't know of too many people that are depending on him to play more than, in the most optimistic circles, 60 games. Again, most optimistic circles.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So does this then, is the biggest change for the Sixers team, Keith, going to be the way they go about playing the game, where they're not going to be if a Dembona and Andre Drummond are your center, you're not basing your offensive scheme around them. It's going to be about Tyrese Maxey. For as many games as Tyrese Maxey can play, with or without Embiid, with or without Paul George, I believe Maxey has to be the star of the show, so that you can have any consistency with this team. And also, not just that, but your best chance to win consistently will be with him running the show. When it comes to a difference between last year and really years prior and this year and this upcoming season, I think the biggest difference isn't going to be a name on a roster. It's going to be the guy that's going to be most available probably, and that's Tyrese Maxey, and centering things around him. Do you think that is going to be the biggest shift from last year to this year?
I think they tried that last year, honestly, and it didn't really work. I mean, it didn't work. I think in order for that to work, you're going to have to get some other guys that's going to have to step up if you do that. I think Quentin Grimes is going to have to, I'm not saying score 40 points, but he's going to have to be able to be a pretty good player, but a pretty good scorer. The same thing with, Jared McCain. He was scoring a bunch of points too, but it wasn't really translating to victories, right? When they were all together. Now, they might have snuck up on a couple of teams and got some wins. To me, and I know what we're saying. I know that we're talking about Embiid. He'll be lucky to play in 60 games. We don't know how many games Paul George is going to play. You know, the team is talking about being cautious. But in order for the 76ers to be successful, the biggest difference is going to have to get these guys on the floor together, the big three of Embiid, Maxey, PG, on the floor together as much as possible. You know, they were only on the floor together 15 times last year. And the reason why, you know, you could face that Daryl Morey kept his job was because they were injured last year. And you're saying, hey, look, they didn't get a chance to show what they can do. You know, with this roster, with Maxey going down there scoring all the points, and we can't say outside of Paul George, outside of Embiid, we can't say with consistency, like, who is going to be the definite number two guy. Like, who's going to be the Scottie Pippen to his Jordan, right?
Wait, is Maxey the number one guy in this scenario you're rolling out?
If the three of those guys, I mean, the funny thing is, I think as long as if they're playing with the big three, I still think until he proves you that he can't do it, you still have to go through Embiid. And what that does is it frees stuff up for Maxey. And then all of a sudden, everyone is able to eat, right? They got to get PG involved. But when you have just Maxey out there without the other two, you ask yourself, who is going to be the number two consistently? You know, we know that Quentin Grimes had a solid last 24 games. We know that Derek McCain had a solid, you know, first whatever X amount of games. But again, when the stakes get higher and they're no longer playing tanking teams, what is Quentin Grimes going to look like?
Right.
And as good as Jared McCain played, when guys got injured and everyone started realizing he became more of a focal point of the offense, if you look at his last 3 games, he kind of struggled. So to me, there's a lot of unanswered questions. And what that does is it puts more pressure on Maxey. And if nobody's going to step up, I don't know if they could be a winning team without the other two at this particular time.
I absolutely agree with that. That's why, I mean, to me, I rather make the transition to Maxey being the number one guy right now, because I hope that Joel Embiid plays 82 games next year, and I don't even need him to be the MVP of the league. I just to play 82 games, you know, that'd be the best thing. But I'm all about the future when it comes to the Sixers team. And to me, if they make Maxey the number one guy, no question that they have. With Maxey as the number one guy on this roster, they're not competing for a title. They're not competing for a top 3, top 4 seed. They're barely a playoff team. It's not that good a roster without Paul George playing at a high level, Joel Embiid playing at a high level, and obviously Tyrese Maxey raising with those ships as well. But I don't think anyone's delusional to think that, oh, well, Maxey leads the team and they make it to an NBA Finals. No, that's not, I don't think, what anybody's saying. But I'm all about the transitional year. 2 years ago, I think we were talking about a potential gap year with the 76ers where they don't sign anybody. They just see how they do, and they ended up signing Paul George. So it didn't really go to the tune of a gap year. But when it comes to the transition, I think that's where you got to ask more of Maxey in the upcoming season. And maybe Maxey will be better with Kelly Oubre out there more often, Quentin Grimes signed here, Jared McCain taking another step forward, VJ Edgecombe showing what he can do at this level. Maybe he can be better with some other guys trying to help him out and not the, mash unit of teams they tried to assemble around him right before he went out for the rest of the season with the finger injury.
Yeah. I agree.
I agree. All right. When we come back, all right, we got to get into this Grimes thing because this is actually going in the 76ers' favor, I believe. We'll talk about that in a second when we return. This is Locked On 76ers. We've talked about the Grimes situation a lot. I've said a lot on this show already that when I look at Quentin Grimes, I just can't believe that we're spending this much time in the offseason, and rightfully so, because it's one of the things that the Sixers do need to make sure they check the box of, which is getting Quentin Grimes back here. He's a guy that would be in your starting five, but the longer this drags out with him as a restricted free agent with no other offers that we know of to this point, the longer this goes, the better it is for the Sixers, no?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is. Because like, let's face it, what the Sixers could do is, I mean, they made him that qualifying offer for 8.7. And it's good for them right now for this season, because then you can go to him and you can say, hey, you know what? This is what we want to offer you. We really respect you, and we're going to give you maybe a 3-year deal or whatever, how many years on it, for like maybe we'll give you 15 or something. Now, if he agrees to that, that's great for the Sixers, right? But since they already made that qualifying offer, what if he says, I don't want that, and then all of a sudden he takes the 8.7 and then becomes an unrestricted free agent the following year? In that scenario, with the TV deal getting ready to come in, it could be better for him, but right now it's good for the Sixers if the Sixers can come with a way to, I think, still say, hey, look, we're going to give you 3 years. We're going to give you this. We'll give you that if he agrees to it. If he agrees to it.
Is this process taking longer than you thought it would?
Yeah. I mean, it had. Because look, when you look at it, I want to say when James Harden agreed, when he took less money a couple years ago and he agreed to come back to the Sixers, that occurred at the beginning of Summer League. Like, literally, I remember, like, I was landing in Las Vegas and it's like, oh, I got to get on this James Harden. Literally wrote the article at the baggage claim in Vegas. Seriously, I did.
Oh,
And then the thing about Paul Reed, that happened maybe around the same time when Utah gave Paul that money. So yeah, this is dragging out a little bit longer than I expected. Now, also, I do think the reason why it's dragging out longer, because teams like the Brooklyn Nets, the Utah Jazz, money is gone. And I think Utah isn't dumb enough to let's say I'm going to throw money at them, and then the Sixers are going to come back and match it, right? They're not trying to get played or get used.
Danny Ainge messes with us again.
Yeah, he doesn't want to do that. He wants to win. He does not want to lose. But I think the fact that Brooklyn, the things that they did is good. Now, here's the thing. Maybe, let's think about this. Maybe the Washington Wizards, the fact that they brought out Marcus Smart, maybe they could think about this and possibly become a player. But again, he has to agree to that, and go there and see if the 76ers are going to be willing to match it. But when I look at a guy like Trey Jones, why would you go out if you got Trey Jones and you got a young team without a timeline? Why would you go out there and get Quentin Grimes? So it just doesn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm. The only other thing that we talk about this a lot in football more so than anything else, but if Quentin Grimes waits a little longer and then, God forbid something else happens to another player somewhere else across the league, all of a sudden his position becomes that of an emergency and maybe his price goes up a little bit more. But I think, to use another football term, that's a Hail Mary of a play by the Grimes camp. So if you had to put a timeline on it, I know it's difficult to say right now. Do you think this is something that just drags on for a couple more weeks? Or do you think this is something that the 76ers will try to nail down, in the not too distant future?
I think it's something that could drag on a little bit longer, like just a little bit longer. But I think that if I'm both sides, if I'm Quentin's side, you're trying to see if there's a market. And like what you said, if someone gets injured, they can go up until September or whenever to do this before they have to, resort to that qualifying offer. So my thing is, if I'm him, I'm just holding out a little bit longer. I mean, just in case, because if someone gets injured, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, you're going to make money. I mean, right now, whatever the Sixers are offering or willing to offer is not going to change. But the only how it would change is if someone got injured. So if it's me, I will hold out a little bit longer.
There you go. Well, Keith, in the event that this doesn't work out, I want to go over a couple of names with you on tomorrow's show that could be the next Quinton Grimes for the Sixers team. We'll go over that. We'll also continue to follow what's going to happen with this big three as the season is going to be here before we know it. That's Keith Pompey. Make sure you guys are reading him on Inquirer.com. I'm Marc Farzetta. We appreciate you guys checking out Locked On 76ers and making that your first listen every day. We thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen today. For your second listen, make sure you guys check out Locked On NBA Podcast, where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For Keith Pompey, I'm Marc Farzetta. We'll be talking more Sixers tomorrow on Locked On 76ers.